Hello, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed your lunch break and now feel refreshed and ready to hear the upcoming case study. As in the IT industry, customer experience is one of the main factors when it comes to digitalization of business models. We benefit from the learnings about tools and methodologies and translate it to our internal processes by putting the needs of our employees to the main focus of it. By applying these learnings in our daily business, we walk through all the phases of the employee experience lifecycle together with our colleagues and support them to have the best possible working life. Joining us today, who will be talking more about this topic, will be Netconomy's Christina Wolf. She acted as the Netacademy's coach, and in 2020, she took the opportunity for her own further development, thus taking over the role of head of recruiting and people development. Finding the best fitting people and constantly working on improving the work life at an economy is what her heart beats for. Dear Christina, the virtual stage is all yours.
Hi, many thanks and many thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Let me quickly share my screen. I think it's either wrong. Ah, slightly technical issues. So now you should see the right ones. Hi, everyone. As said, and is also written in the slides, the war for talent is on, and employee experience matters. And when we think about the war for talents, most people think about the recruiting issues, so that we have issues in finding the right people for us. But I only partially agree with that because the war for talents is not only about recruiting; it's also about our current employees, our current colleagues, how they experience their day-to-day working life. And I would like to give you an overview how this war for talents look at an economy or with what issues we are dealing. So, what is the war for talents for us? To give you a brief overview, we're currently searching for about 30 new colleagues within a company that has grown to almost 500 employees located in 7 locations within 4 different countries. And we're not recruiting or working only location based, we are working cross located. So it basically doesn't really matter on which location our employees are sitting because we all work together as one team. But what are we doing, generally speaking, as a company? We were founded more than 20 years ago in Graz, in Austria, where our headquarters is still located. And as I said, we currently have almost 500 employees. And we committed to customer-centric innovations. So that's also the first connection to employee experience because all our processes in customer projects are always focused on the needs and the wishes of the end users. So by using a tool, what is really the need and the benefit for the one who is using it? We don't build up everything from scratch. We're working with proven technologies from SAP Customer Experience and also Google Cloud Platform. And we're not only building digital platforms, we bring digital strategies to life. So we support our customer in digitalize their processes. When we think about our HR department, I would like to go 1 year back to the situation in 2020. For historical reasons, we back then had 2 HR teams. One was located in Belgrade, in Serbia, and one located in Graz, in Austria. We had and of course, we had to grow together to one team. At the same time, we introduced a new lead structure within the team We worked fully remote and it was a pandemic. So we had slight some issues to face and also to think about how we want to structure in future and what is really important as an HR department to provide the best possible working environment to our colleagues. And the idea came up that we have so much experience in customer-centric design in our project teams, in our customer projects. So why not taking it over also to our internal processes? And we defined our employee experience life cycle, how we live it at an economy. Basically, the employee experience life cycle is structured in 8 phases. So it is from the very beginning, from the very first touch points, from potential new colleagues, from applicants, until the bitter end or even longer. And overall, you have the employer branding, because employer branding is not only there for the recruiting process or for positioning on the market, but also for communication to our internal colleagues. Let's take a look at the single phases. Starting with employer branding, as said, it's an overall topic. Within this phase, we think about how do we want to be seen in the market, what makes us attractive as an employer, as said, for applicants, but also for existing colleagues, and how can we really differentiate us from others? How can we work out and communicate what makes us a special snowflake on the market? Now, dive deeper into single phases. First, of course, it all starts with recruiting. What do we look on? What do we look there? So, of course, how do we find the right people? But also, how do the right people find us? How do they experience the communication with us and the whole recruiting process? And how can we convince them and provide them all the benefits and the solutions we can provide? The second phase is onboarding and mentoring. For me personally, I think this is one of the most crucial phases in the whole life cycle. Because the very first impression counts, of course. And when we all think back to our very first days in a new company, they were potentially kind of insecure because you don't know anybody, you don't know the processes, you don't know anything. So it's basically highly, highly important that we as an employer provide this safe environment and the feeling to be valued and to be welcomed, and to not to hesitate to ask questions, to be supported in these very first days in the company. The third phase, we define performance and recognition. So basically, human beings learn most out of failures, or we usually learn more out of failures than out of success. And this is because of the so-called surprise effect. There are studies about it. But what is really essential to also make use of this knowledge or this, these studies, is that we provide the error culture and the feedback culture within the company, that you are allowed to make a mistake and basically try again. And on the other hand, we also want to recognize and appreciate people who go the extra mile. There has to be a difference if you do basically a 9-to-5 job, or you engage more and you really go the extra mile and be close to the company. An important fact about that is that being seen and being appreciated is one of the fundamental needs of human beings. So that is why this phase is so highly important to us. The fourth phase is feedback and satisfaction. And I want to point out that in this phase, we're talking about feedback from the employees towards us as a company or to us as leads, because we can only learn and grow as a company when we know what our people really need. What is the daily business like, or what are the issues they face? How can we improve on that? So of course, the best way would be a personal face-to-face feedback, because then you can also ask questions or challenge the things a little bit. But not everyone feels comfortable with providing this feedback face-to-face. So we also have to ensure the possibility to give anonymous feedback to us and work with it. The fifth phase is development, and is highly connected, of course, to the previous phases. And when we trust studies, then we can say that after a few years, someone is working in a role, there comes to the point where this person wants more, and this more is a highly individual thing. So the challenge in there is to find out what this more means. More could be the next step in the promotion on a hierarchical level. It could also mean that someone wants to broaden the responsibilities or wants to switch to a completely different role. And it's not that easy to find out what this more really means and how we can engage it and promote it and support it. But if we lack in this phase, our employees lack the perspective. The sixth phase is employee services. And within there, we want to provide clarity with guidelines and tools. So of course, within each and every company, there needs to be some guidelines and rules, but we also want to provide as much individual flexibility as possible. Within this phase, we also worked out how we are now dealing with flexible home office guideline, for example, as COVID-19 showed us that productivity is not based to any locations. But we have to keep in mind that there is also balance between personal needs and clear guidelines, so also that the company perspective does not lack. And of course, we take care about the salaries in this phase. The seventh phase is about separation. So even the best employee experience might end someday. And within this phase, there are 2 points which are significantly important. And one is that we take a close look about on the reason why this colleague is going to leave us. And for that, we should not just look on the recent, what happened recently, but also take a close look on the previous month. When we think about the whole process, did we lack in the people development, for example? Did we lack in the appreciation? So also not just keeping on the focus on the recent happenings, but also month before. And the second important point is that we want to say goodbye as friends. We don't want to separate in a bad mood, but we really want to keep the connection to each other, which leads me to the 8th phase, the alumni club, which is quite new. We recently experienced that quite some people who left an economy once returned back to us, which makes us, of course, really happy and proud. And with that, we said we should put more focus on that, to keep in touch with people who once left us, to provide them news, to inform them what's happening in the company culture, on a structural environment, and so on, to keep them up to date and potentially have the chance to get them back. With defining this employee experience lifecycle, what it means to us in economy, we had then to define how can we as HR provide it, or what can we do to bring it to life. So the first step was that when we took a look back at on the 8 phases, we defined 2 so-called phase captains per each phase. And these 2 phase captains per phase are basically responsible for the processes within this phase. That does not mean that the person or these 2 people have to fulfill each and every task on their own, but they are the drivers. They challenge the processes, they bring in new ideas, they take care that the important or the responsible people within the company are involved, and so on. With defining this, we have the possibility that we can focus on certain topics and don't are overwhelmed with this big topic at all. As a next step, we had to think about the methodology we're going to use. And also here, we thought about what is already very common within the company, and what can we learn from our colleagues who already working in this agile project management. And we made use of some Scrum increments. So if you haven't heard about Scrum, it's an agile project management, and we found out that we can use it quite good to us. And these 4 steps, or these 4 increments, these 4 tools were the ones we choose that it fits to us. So we introduced daily stand-ups. Basically, we come together as a team on a daily basis and shortly explain what is going to happen, or what's on the table currently. We defined that we work in monthly sprints, and the sprint is basically just a time iteration where you commit, comes to the next point, what will be done within this next sprint. And after that, or also during that, we constantly take a look on what is good and what could be improved. So we're doing also retrospectives to check, are we on the right track? How does it look like in real life, or to give you a better picture how it looks like? I tried to draw it a little bit. So when you see the employee experience lifecycle as it is, we break it down to these monthly sprints, and within these sprints we define really small cutted tasks. Why is it necessary to cut it to the smallest possible piece? Because then we can estimate it better. We can really say, okay, even in busy times, a small task can be fulfilled, and you also benefit from it that you don't have this big, maybe overwhelming topic, but small pieces which are doable, which can be reached, and you have successes quicker. Beside that, company-wide, we're also working with objectives and key results, a methodology to drive strategic topics on a company level, and they are usually set on a quarterly base. So we also had to find a way how we can define these monthly sprints together with these quarterly based company-wide strategic goals. And we defined for us that we take it and again cut it into pieces so that they fit in these monthly sprints. The important thing about these sprints and these small tasks is that really the responsible person defines it on her or his own. So it's not up to the team to define the task. The person who is going to do it needs to define it, because then we have this clear commitment to it that I'm going to do to fulfill it in the next month. I don't want to talk only about the good things. We also had a lot of learnings in the recent month. So basically, what were the main learnings? The first one was to have clear goals for each phase, and I have to say it honestly, we lacked that a little bit. So we missed the fact to define really clear goals. What do we want to reach within this phase? But luckily, we found it out quite quickly when we started working on it. So when we thought about, okay, what do we want to achieve within this phase? Not to just change processes because of the changing, but really what is the benefit when we do it? The second main learning is communication. This was a big learning for myself. As my previous role, I used to work already in a Scrum process, so a lot of things were clear to me, and I had to adjust my own communication to the team, and not to get tired to explain it and explain the purpose of the methodology again and again. Because you can imagine at the very beginning, it might seem very overwhelming, or it might seem that you have even more effort next to your daily business to it. But I would also like to share a really nice situation this year where 2 of the team members came to me after a sprint review and said, okay, we were curious, we were suspicious at the very beginning. What do you, or how could this process work out? But finally, we see that it really helps us to focus on the one hand, but on the other hand, also to keep the overview what's happening in the whole team. And the third learning is about effort estimations and adaptations. Honestly speaking, we underestimated some topics quite a lot. And with that, of course, we had to adapt it. And keeping this flexibility on the one hand to be open to these adaptations, and on the other hand, trying to estimate it as properly as possible was also a big learning. And when you speak about estimations, it all starts with the task we put to our sprints, so that they are not too overwhelming, not too big. How can they be described so that you really can also measure if this task was fulfilled or not. But overall, it helps us a lot to focus on what's really necessary for our colleagues. So as said, we don't want to change process just because of the changement. We want to change process because of the benefit for our colleagues, to provide the best possible working environment. And I only can repeat myself, the war for talent is on, and it's not only about recruiting, it's also about our existing colleagues. So the employee experience matters.
Thank you, Christina, very much. Unfortunately, our time is up. First of all,
it was
I'd
in
like
time.
to thank you.
Done.
Yeah, actually, I'd like to thank you for joining us this HR week. We love to have you here. Also, would like to extend a big thank you to Netconomy for partnering up with us and making HR week as great as it is. It was a wonderful session. We learned a lot, and I wish you a nice day ahead.
Thanks to you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.